These girls are abandoned by their mum on the highway, but their cruel mother didn't know their deceased father had left something hidden in their bags. Then everyone is shocked with what they discover. Comment giving a score from 0 to 10. To my story, your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. I count on your help. The biting morning wind whipped across the devastated woman's face like invisible blades as she pulled her beat-up sedan to the side of the dusty highway. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel, not just from the cold, but from the weight of the decision she'd wrestled with for the past 3 sleepless nights. At 28, she looked a decade older, aged by the last 3 months since her husband had passed, leaving behind a crushing debt that devoured every penny she managed to earn. In the back seat, 2 4-year-old girls slept nestled together, each clutching a small, worn leather satchel that had belonged to their father. The older one had his dark hair, while the younger, visibly smaller due to malnutrition in recent months, clutched a tattered teddy bear to her chest, her only comfort on hungry nights. The desperate mother took a deep breath, fighting back tears that threatened to spill. The 500.0 in debt her husband had left felt like an insurmountable mountain. Working as a cleaner in 3 different places, sleeping only 4 hours a night, she could barely afford the rent on their tiny apartment. The girls had lost weight drastically, and the younger one looked barely 2 years old, so fragile was her constitution. "Girls," she whispered, gently touching the older one's shoulder. "Wake up, sweethearts." The girls opened their big, frightened eyes, immediately recognizing that something was different. Their mother's heavy atmosphere of sadness was palpable, and they had already learned to read the signs of despair on her tired face. "Mommy needs you to be very brave now," she continued, her voice cracking with emotion. "You're going to stay here for a little while, until I can get things straightened out for us." The older one, with her precocious intelligence that had always impressed her daycare teachers, instantly understood what was happening. "You're not coming back, are you, Mommy?" she asked with a devastating maturity for her age. The tears the mother had been holding back finally flowed. "I love you more than anything in this world. Never forget that. And take care of Daddy's bags, they're important." The younger one started to cry, reaching out her skinny arms towards her mother. "Don't go, Mommy, please don't go." But the devastated woman had already made her decision. With her heart breaking into a million pieces, she kissed each daughter's forehead, took the satchels from the back seat, and placed them beside them on the highway. "Stay together. Always. Protect each other." Unable to look back, she got into the car and sped away, leaving behind the 2 children who were the reason for her existence, but whom she believed she could no longer protect. The sound of the girls' desperate screams followed her for miles, echoing in her soul like a wound that would never heal. The sisters stood on the dusty highway for hours, hugging and crying, waiting for their mother to return. As the sun began to set, and the cold of the night approached, the older one took her younger sister's hand and picked up the 2 heavy satchels. "Let's find a place to sleep," she said, trying to imitate the strength she always saw in her mother. "Daddy said these bags are important. We'll take care of them." They walked along the highway until complete darkness enveloped the landscape. Exhausted and terrified, they sheltered under a large tree, using the satchels as pillows and warming each other with the little heat their small bodies could generate. For 3 days, the girls walked aimlessly, sharing the few cookies their mother had left in one of the bags and drinking water from streams they found along the way. The younger one grew weaker and weaker, and the older one felt the weight of the responsibility to protect her sister, even without fully understanding where they were or where they should go. It was on the 3rd day, when the sun was high and they could barely drag the heavy satchels any further, that they spotted in the distance an extensive rural property with an imposing mansion surrounded by manicured lawns. Hope flickered in the older one's tired eyes as she pointed to the building. "Look, sis," she whispered, "maybe someone there can help us." The widowed millionaire was walking through the gardens of his rural estate on a Saturday morning, watching the groundskeepers tend to the rose bushes that his late wife loved so much. At 30, he possessed a striking appearance, perfectly styled dark hair, athletic build, and green eyes that contrasted with the constant melancholy he carried since losing his partner 2 years ago. His fortune, built through smart investments in the stock market and cryptocurrencies, allowed him to live isolated from the world in his 15-bedroom mansion. The wealth he had accumulated was enough for several generations, but all that money could not fill the void he felt since the accident that took his wife. As he walked, something caught his attention at the entrance to the property. 2 small figures were slowly approaching the main gate, dragging what appeared to be luggage too heavy for their size. Frowning, he headed towards them, intrigued by the presence of children on his isolated property. As he got closer, his heart nearly stopped. 2 girls, clearly exhausted and malnourished, were collapsed near the iron gate. The older one was still trying to protect the younger, who had fainted from weakness. Both were wearing dirty and torn clothes, and their faces were burned by the sun of the past few days. "My God," he murmured, running towards the children. His controlling and perfectionist nature, characteristics that had made him a successful businessman, immediately manifested as he assessed the critical situation. The older girl raised her big, frightened eyes when he approached. "Please, sir," she whispered with a hoarse voice, "my little sister is very weak. Can you help us?" The millionaire felt something stir in his chest, an emotion he had not experienced in a long time. Without hesitating, he picked up the younger girl in his arms, noticing how dangerously light she was, and extended his free hand to the older one. "Come with me," he said gently. "We'll take care of you." Inside the luxurious mansion, he took them directly to the nearest guest room. The contrast between the opulence of the environment, with fine wooden furniture, Persian carpets and works of art on the walls, and the girl's deplorable condition was shocking. He called his housekeeper, a 50-year-old woman who had worked on the property for a decade. "Prepare a warm bath for them and find some clothes that fit. And call Dr. Miller. I need him to come here immediately." While the housekeeper cared for the girls, the millionaire watched the 2 leather satchels they had brought. They were old pieces, well made, but visibly worn by time and the journey. Something about them piqued his curiosity, especially the protective way the older girl refused to part with them. When the doctor arrived after examining the children, his diagnosis was clear: severe malnutrition, dehydration, and extreme exhaustion, but nothing that could not be treated with proper care. "They will need constant medical monitoring in the coming weeks," explained Dr. Miller, "and a lot of patience. Children who have experienced trauma like this take time to recover completely." That first night, the millionaire found himself in a completely new situation. He had hired nannies in the past for social events, but had never really cared for children. His controlling personality made him want to solve everything immediately. But he realized that this situation required delicacy. The younger girl woke up in the middle of the night screaming, apparently having nightmares. The millionaire, who also suffered from insomnia since the loss of his wife, heard the screams and ran to the room. He found her shaking with fear, while her older sister tried to comfort her. "She always has nightmares," explained the older one, with a deep sadness in her eyes. "Since Daddy left and Mommy." "It's all right now," he said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "You're safe here." To his surprise, the younger girl stopped crying when he started talking. There was something in his voice that reassured her. On impulse, he began to tell a story about a distant kingdom where all the animals lived in peace, a story that his own mother used to tell when he was little. Gradually, both girls calmed down, and he realized that he had a natural talent for calming them. That discovery surprised him, considering his usual difficulty in demonstrating genuine affection. During the first week, while the girls recovered physically, the millionaire began to observe behaviors that intrigued him. The older one demonstrated an extraordinary ability with numbers, managing to do complex mental calculations that impressed even him, who had built his fortune through precise financial analysis. "How do you do that so fast?" he asked after she mentally calculated a multiplication problem that would take most adults minutes. "Daddy taught me," she replied simply. "He said numbers were like music, that they had their own rhythm." That revelation aroused even more his curiosity about the girl's past. Who were their parents? How had they arrived on his property? And why were two such small children alone in the world? But his questions would have to wait. The second week brought an unexpected complication that would completely change the course of the situation. His stepmother, a 55-year-old woman known for her cruel personality and her contempt for the less fortunate, paid a surprise visit to the property. When she saw the two girls running through the gardens, playing for the first time in months, her expression hardened in a way he knew very well. "What does this mean?" she asked, her voice as icy as ever. "Why are there two dirty children on my property?" "They're not dirty," he replied, feeling the familiar tension that always accompanied encounters with his stepmother. "And this is my property." "Don't be naive," she retorted, watching the girls with disdain. "Those children clearly do not belong in our social circle. Do you have any idea what this can do to your reputation? To our business?" At that moment, the millionaire realized that the battle he was about to begin would be much more complex than simply caring for two orphans. He would have to choose between family pressure and something that was beginning to grow in his heart, a feeling that he had buried along with his wife, but that was now being reborn with unexpected force. The tension in the mansion intensified in the days following the cruel stepmother's visit. The millionaire realized that she would not easily give up her demand that he get rid of the girls. During 2 weeks, a deep connection had formed between him and the children, especially when he discovered that he could calm the youngest's constant nightmares simply by staying by her side until she fell asleep. His routine had changed completely. The man who once spent 16 hours a day analyzing investments and managing his multi-million-dollar estate now found himself telling stories at night, teaching the older one about advanced mathematics, and watching with fascination as she solved problems that would challenge his own accountants. "Would you like to learn about stocks?" he asked one afternoon, while the older girl was doing mental calculations with the numbers he had given her. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity. "What are stocks?" "They're little pieces of companies that you can buy," he explained, impressed with her ease in understanding complex financial concepts. "When the company makes money, you make money too." "Like Daddy did?" she asked suddenly, making him stop. "Your father worked with investments?" "He always talked about numbers and companies," replied the girl, nervously fiddling with the golden key she always wore around her neck, a detail he had noticed but never questioned. "He said one day he would teach us everything." That conversation was abruptly interrupted when the millionaire's older brother, an ambitious 35-year-old lawyer, arrived at the property unannounced. There was something in his eyes that immediately aroused the businessman's suspicion. "We need to talk," said the brother, watching the girls playing in the garden. "In private." In the office, the lawyer got straight to the point. "Our stepmother told me about your new situation. Do you have any idea of the legal implications of keeping two children without proper documentation?" "They are not objects to be kept," replied the millionaire, feeling his controlling personality emerge as a defense. "They are children who needed help, and you helped them. Now it's time to turn them over to the appropriate authorities," said the brother. But there was something in his tone that did not sound genuinely concerned. "I'm saying this for your own good. You can't risk everything you've built for two strangers." What the millionaire did not know was that his brother had already hired a private investigator. The motivation was not family protection, but pure envy. For years he had watched his brother's fortune grow exponentially through investments in Bitcoin and other financial applications. while his own legal career, although successful, did not provide him with the same wealth. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, a violent storm hit the region. The wind howled against the windows of the mansion, and the rain fell hard enough to flood the local roads. It was during this storm that the situation became critical. The younger girl developed a sudden high fever, and her older sister also began to show symptoms of illness. Doctor Miller couldn't get through due to the blocked roads, and the millionaire found himself alone to care for two seriously ill children. For 3 consecutive days, he did not sleep. He applied cold compresses, gave medicine, and stayed constantly by their side, monitoring their temperatures and whispering words of comfort. It was the first time in years that he allowed himself to be truly vulnerable, letting go of his mask of absolute control. On the second night of the storm, the older girl, in a feverish delirium, began to say things that left him intrigued. "Daddy's bags," she murmured. "He said they were the future. The map is hidden. The golden key opens." "What map, sweetheart?" he asked gently, holding the girl's small, hot hand. "In the bags," she whispered before falling back into restless sleep. When the fever finally subsided and the girls were sleeping peacefully, the millionaire looked at the 2 leather satchels that remained in the corner of the room. For weeks, he had respected the children's privacy, but the older one's delirious words awakened a curiosity he could not ignore. Carefully, he examined the old satchels. They were made of genuine leather, with gold hardware that, despite the wear, still showed the superior quality of manufacture. As he ran his fingers over the surface, he felt something strange, a small irregularity in the inner lining of one of the satchels. Investigating more carefully, he discovered a skillfully hidden secret compartment. Inside it, he found a detailed hand-drawn map showing the location of somewhere he did not recognize, and a golden key similar to the one the older girl always wore around her neck. The map was intriguing. It showed streets, buildings, and even numbers that seemed to be coordinates. In the lower corner, a careful handwriting had written, "For the future of my princesses, Daddy." At that moment, the millionaire understood that there was much more to these children's story than he had imagined. The father was not just someone who had passed away. He was someone who had carefully planned to leave something important for his daughters. But his discoveries were interrupted when he learned through a tense phone call from his personal lawyer that his stepmother had carried out her threat. She had contacted social services, making up a story about children being held illegally by a single man in questionable conditions. "They will investigate next week," informed the lawyer. "You need to prepare for possible legal complications." The millionaire looked at the girls who were sleeping peacefully after the storm and realized that he was facing the most important decision of his life. Fighting legally for them would mean exposing his private life, risking his business reputation, and possibly losing a fortune in legal battles. But handing them over to the system would mean bringing back the emptiness that had consumed his existence before they arrived. As he watched the children's soft breathing, he touched the map found in the satchel and made a decision that would change everything. No matter the consequences, he would fight for them, and the first thing he would do was discover all the secrets that map held. Outside, the storm was finally subsiding, but a new storm was just beginning. One that would test not only his determination, but also reveal truths about the past that would completely transform the future of all involved. The social services investigation arrived on a Monday morning, 3 months after the girl's initial abandonment. The millionaire had prepared meticulously, organizing all medical records, nutrition reports, and evidence of the children's well-being. His perfectionist nature manifested in every detail, from the impeccable documentation to the way the girls were dressed and fed. During the tense court hearing that followed, he presented solid arguments about his financial and emotional capacity to care for the children. His lawyers had prepared a robust case, demonstrating that his net worth was more than sufficient to provide quality education, medical care, and a stable future. But at the most critical moment of the hearing, when the judge was about to make a decision, something unexpected happened. The doors of the courtroom opened, and a devastated 28-year-old woman rushed in, her eyes red from crying, but with a desperate determination on her face. It was the girl's biological mother. The private investigator hired by the millionaire's brother had discovered her identity and location. Working at a diner on the outskirts of town, she had saved every penny during those 3 months, sleeping only 4 hours a night in a desperate attempt to gather enough money to get her daughters back. The investigator, initially planning to use this information for blackmail, had been touched by the woman's tireless dedication and decided to reveal everything in exchange for a smaller amount. "My daughters!" she cried as she saw the girls, who were sitting next to the millionaire. "Please, I want my daughters back." The reunion was devastating. The girls, who had adapted to life in the mansion and developed a deep bond with the millionaire, initially did not recognize their mother. 3 months of good food, medical care, and security had transformed their appearances, while the suffering and exhaustive work had aged the woman even more. "Mommy?" whispered the older one, uncertain, after long seconds of silence. The pain in the mother's eyes, as she realized her daughter's hesitation, was visible to everyone in the room. The millionaire, observing the suffering of everyone involved, felt his heart break. His usual difficulty in expressing feelings was overcome by the emotional urgency of the moment. "Wait," he said, standing up. "We're all suffering here. There has to be a better solution." The judge, impressed by the emotional complexity of the situation, granted a 1-week transition period so that everyone involved could reach an agreement that prioritized the well-being of the children. During that crucial week, the millionaire made a decision that surprised everyone. He sought out the girl's mother in her small apartment on the edge of town and made a proposal that would change all their lives. "Come live on the property," he said, observing the simple but clean environment where she lived. "Work for me as an estate manager. Your daughters will have access to the best education, medical care, and you will always be with them." The mother looked at him suspiciously. "Why would you do that?" "Because I've learned something important in these 3 months," he replied, his voice filled with a genuine emotion he rarely displayed. "Those girls taught me to love again. And true love isn't possession, it's wanting the best for who you love." 2 days later, during the move of the mother and daughters to the rural estate, something extraordinary happened. While the girls were running through the gardens, showing their mother all the places where they had played, the older one's satchel accidentally opened. The contents spilled onto the grass, revealing not only children's clothes, but something that left everyone paralyzed. Priceless jewelry, diamonds, rubies, emeralds, and documents carefully protected in plastic envelopes. "My God," murmured the mother, picking up a diamond necklace that was worth more than all the debt left by her husband. "How was this here?" The millionaire, with his experience in asset evaluation, immediately recognized that they were facing a fortune. But the documents were even more revealing. They contained detailed evidence of a multi-million-dollar fraud in the company where the girl's father had worked before his passing. "He discovered something," said the mother, reading the papers with tears in her eyes. "My husband was an accountant at that company. In the last months before he passed, he was very worried. He said he had discovered irregularities in the accounting books." The map that the millionaire had found earlier finally made sense. The coordinates led to a bank in the neighboring town, and the golden key opened a safe deposit box that the father had secretly rented. Together, they went to the bank, where they discovered that the safe contained not only more evidence of the fraud, but also an amount in dollars and euros sufficient to guarantee the girl's future for a lifetime. The father had discreetly sold some of his personal assets and gathered irrefutable evidence of the corruption he had discovered. An emotional letter was along with the money. "To my princesses, if you are reading this, it means that I was not able to expose the truth in time. Use this evidence to do justice and build a better future than I could offer. Daddy loves you forever." The revelation completely transformed everyone's perception of the father. He had not simply passed away, he had fought to the last moment to protect his family and ensure justice. 6 months after the initial abandonment, on a sunny afternoon, the millionaire found himself in the garden, watching the girl's mother teaching the youngest to plant flowers, while the older one helped with investment calculations of part of the found inheritance. "I never imagined this was possible," said the mother, approaching him with a genuine smile, the first he had seen on her face. "A non-traditional family, but a true family," he replied, realizing that he had found something that all the money in the world could not buy. His marriage proposal, made the next morning, was not based on romantic passion, but on a deep, familial love that had grown gradually. "I'm not asking you to be my wife for romantic love," he said honestly. "I'm asking because I've learned that family is a choice, and I choose you." The cruel stepmother, confronted with the genuine happiness she witnessed on the property and with her own loneliness, finally asked for forgiveness. The lawyer brother, seeing the positive transformation of his brother and the financial stability that the discovery of the treasure had brought, gave up his ambitious plans. The story culminated when the girls, now healthy and educated, helped the millionaire to use the evidence found to expose the fraud of the company where their father had worked. Justice was finally done, honoring the memory of an upright man who had sacrificed everything to protect his family. On the rural estate, surrounded by flowering gardens and the sound of children's laughter, the non-traditional family that had formed found peace and prosperity. The children grew up in safety and love. The mother had finally forgiven herself for the moment of despair that paradoxically had led her daughters to the home they always deserved. And the millionaire discovered that true wealth was not in his investments or applications, but in the unconditional love of a family that he had chosen to build together. If you liked this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment on what you thought of my story, giving it a score from 0 to 10, and thank you very much.